Oh. Shalom, 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 shalom. First, I want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah, Kadash. Double honors to the apostles, the elders of Great Millstone, who are leading this word in truth and spirit and sincerity. And salutations to all the righteous Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters that are out there. That shalom, shalom, shalom to the Akiams and to the Akwafs. As you see today, we're going to talk about the Diaspora. The Diaspora. We're going to go into the word Diaspora, and we're going to bring out some scriptures pertaining about the Diaspora of the house of Israel. What does the word mean? So, as you can see here, the term, well, it's pronounced diaspora, right? The term diaspora, right, comes from an ancient Greek word meaning to scatter about, right, or to scatter abroad. And that's exactly what the people of a diaspora do. They scatter from their homeland to places across the globe, spreading their culture as they go. Right? Who does that remind you of? The definition of a diaspora is the dispersion of people from their homeland, or a community formed by people who have exited or been removed from their homeland. Who does that remind you of? So it shows you here. It says an example of a diaspora is the 6th century exile of the Jews, right, which are the Israelites, right, from outside Israel to Babylon. So that's talking about a specific time when our ancestors were taken out of the land of Israel by King Shalmaneser. I think he's King Shalmaneser the fourth. It's in the where are we? Second book of Kings, Kings 2, I think chapter 17. So we can quickly pull it up here. So that's talking about a specific time, right? Yeah, 2 Kings chapter 17, right? Verse 1. It says, in the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, began Hosea the son of Elah to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. Right? Samaria is a northern kingdom, right? And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him. And against him came up Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, and Hosea became his servant and gave him presents. And the king of Assyria, which is Shalmaneser, found conspiracy in Hosea, for he had sent messengers to the so king of Egypt and brought no presents to the king of Assyria. And as he had done and brought no presents to the king of Assyria as he had done year by year. Therefore, the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria, which is the northern kingdom of Israel, and carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halah and in Harbour by the river of Gozan, and in the cities of the Medes. For so it was that the children of Israel had sinned against the Lord, their power, which had brought them up out of the land of Egypt, from under the hand of the Pharaoh of Egypt, and had feared other gods, and walked in the statutes of the heathen. This is what Israel did. This is why we were taken out of the land. This was the first great diaspora of the children of Israel, right? Our ancestors. So verse 8 says, so 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 8, it says, and walked in the statutes of the heathen, whom the Lord cast out from before the children of Israel, and of the kings of Israel, which they had made. And the children of Israel did secretly those things that were not right against the Lord, Yahweh their power. And they built them high places in all their cities, and from the tower of the watchmen and the fenced cities. And they had set up images and groves in the high hills and under every green tree. And there they burnt incense in all the high places, as did the heathens, whom the Lord, Yahweh, carried away before them, and wrought wicked things to provoke the Lord to anger. For they served idols, whereof the Lord had said unto them, ye shall not do these things. Yet the Lord Yahweh testified against Israel and against Judah by all the prophets and by all the seers, saying, turn ye from your evil ways and keep my commandments and my statutes, according to the law which I commanded your fathers, which I sent to you by my servants the prophets. So that was the first major diaspora of the children of Israel that took place, right? That was under King. Under King Hosea, the son of Elah, who reigned in Samaria, right? He was the king of Israel at the time, King Hosea, and the person that did it was King Shalmaneser of Assyria. Right, he was the king that did it. He's known as Shalmaneser the Fifth. Right, he was the king of Assyria. So we're going to go into some scriptures here, right? So we are the descendants of the diaspora because we had been scattered. The second great diaspora was 70 AD, right? Where the Lord spoke of that. When the Lord spoke of how the Romans were going to take down Jerusalem, all right? That was the second great diaspora. That is spoken of in the book of Matthew. Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24, verse 15. It says, when you therefore shall see the abomination of the desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whosoever readeth, let him understand. Then let them which are in Judea flee into the mountains, and let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in winter, neither on the Sabbath day. Right? For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world. And that goes into, right? That goes into now the last days. But what we read in verse 15 to 20 was the second great diaspora, when Jerusalem was taken down by the Romans, and that was prophesied in the book of Daniel, chapter 9, I believe. I'm gonna go straight to the point. Chapter 9, verse 26. We're gonna go straight to the point. Verse 26. It says, and after 62 weeks shall the Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. That flood is the soldiers, the Roman army, all right? It's referring to them as the flood. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined, because they desolated the temple, Solomon's temple, right? Remember, that's what they did. They destroyed it, they desolated it, and they stole all of the artifacts out of the temple, right? All of the holy, artifacts that was inside the temple. And it says, verse 27, so Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, and he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of the abominations, he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation. And that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So that's what happened. So that's the prophecy that we read in Matthew, and it's also in, I think, Mark chapter 13, verse 14. So in the book of Mark, chapter 13, verse 14. So it says, but when ye shall see the abomination of the desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand. Then let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains, right? And let him that is on the housetop go not down to the house, neither enter therein to take anything out of the house. And let him that is in the field not turn back again for to take up his garment. But woe to them that are with child and to them that give suck in those days. And pray ye that your flight be not in the winter. So that's what we just read, the prophecy in Daniel's chapter 9, verse 26 and verse 27. That's the desolation, right? That's the abomination and the desolation spoken of by Daniel, which is what we just read here in Daniel's chapter 9, verse 27, right? Verse 26 and 27. So that was the second great diaspora of the children of Israel. The last great diaspora of the children of Israel was, and the most fatal one, was the transatlantic slave trade. This was the last great diaspora of the children of Israel, was the transatlantic slave trade. As you can see, the Atlantic slave trade, transatlantic slave trade, or European American slave trade, that's what it was, involved the transportation by slave traders of various enslaved, and I should say Israelites, because they were not Africans, they were Israelites, right? They were the Jews, they were the Israelites. So it says it was the transportation by slave traders of various enslaved Israelite people, mainly to the Americas. The slave trade regularly used the triangular trade route and its middle passage and existed from the 16th to the 19th century. All right, so this probably gives some images of the passages that they used. So this was the last great diaspora that took place. Was this transatlantic slave trade, all right? That was taken from the West Coast to the Americas. I think there's a better one that shows you, because that's a bit blurry, that one. Yeah, from the West Coast to Gold Coast. They took us all the way to the Americas, South America, everywhere that Esau had his kingdom, basically. Just so you understand, everywhere these Edomites had their kingdom, we were taken to. All right. That should say the Israelite slave trade, because we were not Africans, and this is what they did. All right. So that was the last great diaspora of the children of Israel. So what does the Bible say about this scattering of the children of Israel? Where is it in the Bible to say that these things were going to happen to the true children of Israel in the last days? So let's go to, we want to start. We'll start Leviticus chapter 26. We'll start there first, all right? So Leviticus chapter 26. Leviticus 26, verse, we don't want to start. I'm going to go straight to the point. Start verse 33. It says, and I will scatter you among the heathen, and will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, and your cities waste. All right? So this is what was told Moses, what was going to happen to the children of Israel. So we read the three major accounts that spoke about the great diaspora of the children of Israel. The first major account was under King Shalmaneser, all right? The king of Assyria that came and took down the northern kingdom that was called Samaria, right? And King Hoshea was the king of Israel at that time. That was the great first diaspora. The second one was under Nebuchadnezzar, when the Israelites taken into captivity. Well, that wasn't a diaspora because we were taken into captivity then, but we wasn't scattered then because the majority of us went back to the land. The second one was under the Romans, right? When Israel was taken, when Jerusalem was taken down. Under the Babylonians, Nebuchadnezzar, the southern kingdom became a diaspora because they were taken. It wasn't the northern kingdom, it was the southern kingdom under Nebuchadnezzar. And that was around 600 BC, right? That was the prophecy that Jeremiah said that we're going to go into captivity for 70 years, all right? And then after that, so yes, the Babylonian captivity was considered a diaspora where we were taken and brought into different lands because we were taken out of our land. So yes, that was definitely a diaspora. Let me just correct myself. The Babylonian captivity under Nebuchadnezzar, the 70 years that Israelites spent in captivity, was also a major diaspora of the southern kingdom, all right, which was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. And then the next time that happened to the southern kingdom was under the Romans, 70 AD. And then the last diaspora was also mainly the southern kingdom, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. There was Israelites from the other tribes that was amongst them, but they were the majority of the Israelites were from those three tribes, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. So the last diaspora was under these Europeans, these Edomites, during the transatlantic slave trade. So Moses told Israel from the beginning that we were going to be taken from that land and that we were going to be scattered amongst the heathens. That's why we are where we are today. Because we were taken. So we were taken, and this was the last great diaspora. All right? Let's just quickly bring them up so we can quickly see them. That was the last one. The other one was the Jerusalem, 70 AD. So this was the siege of Jerusalem, right? 70 AD. So this is when I said that this is what you'll see this. We have this in England in a park called Regent's Park. All right, it's called Titus's Arch. This is what's on the top of the arch. They have this in Europe. It's to commemorate them taking down. As you can see, they've got the menorah there, right? See the 7 candlesticks, the menorah, right? They've got that there. This is what the Europeans, the Edomites, made, and they call it Titus's Arch to commemorate them taking down the Israelites. All right. So this is the 70 AD. This represents the 70 AD under. This happened under Emperor Vespasian, all right, and his son General Titus and his other son General Domitian. All right, this started around 66, 67 AD and went on to 73 AD. But the pinnacle of the time, when they actually took Jerusalem, was 70 AD. That's when they breached the walls and got into Jerusalem. This would be considered the third great diaspora, all right? And then, so we got here, the transatlantic slave trade is the fourth one. The third would be 70 AD. And then you got the Babylonian, let's bring this up, captivity. Let's just put Judah because it was the southern kingdom. So this would have been the second great diaspora. We'll just bring this up here so you can see it. Captivity of Israel and Judah. This is showing both. This is showing both of them. This is showing when Judah was taken under the Babylonians, and Israel was taken by the Assyrians. So this is showing you both captivities. Assyria takes Israel into captivity. Babylon takes Judah into captivity. All right? And then Assyria takes Gentiles to fill Israel. That's why we know who those people are in Israel today. They are Gentiles. They are heathens. And that's what the Assyrians did. They put Gentiles in the land. So this is showing you the first two captivities that caused the diaspora of the children of Israel. So Moses had prophesied this from the beginning. He says, and I will scatter you. The Lord says, I will scatter you among the heathen. And I will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, right? And your cities waste. Then shall the land enjoy her Sabbaths, as long as it lies desolate. And ye shall be in your enemy's land. Even then shall the land rest and enjoy her Sabbaths. And as long as it lies desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Sabbaths when you dwelled upon it. And upon them that are left alive of you, I will send a faintness into their hearts in the lands of their enemies. So there was always going to be a faintness in your hearts in the lands of your enemies, all right? It's with us today. Up until today, there's a faintness in our hearts in the land of our enemies. If we're approached by Esau, Edom, whether it's in a uniform or police car, in authority, or in their groups or on the street, because we know who he is. We know this man is the devil that the Bible speaks of. We know he is Esau, right? And even before we knew he was Esau, there was a faintness in our heart under the thumb of this man. And we still have that faintness in our hearts today with this devil. And the sound of a shaken leaf shall what? Shall chase them, and they shall flee as fleeing from a sword. So he said, the sound of a shaken leaf shall chase you, right? And as fleeing from a sword, and they shall fall when none pursueth. And I was reading some things today, some historical things to do with the gangs of these Edomites that chased down young black men and beat them, and in some instances killed them and murdered them. I was reading some of that up today, right? Especially the one that happened in Howard Beach in New York in the 80s. Bensonhurst, to that young boy Yusuf, something. They made a documentary of him on HBO. You know, over here, Stephen Lawrence, that happened in East London, Southeast London. I forget the name of the neighborhood, right? So it says, and they shall fall one upon another, as it were before a sword, when none pursues, and ye shall have no power to stand before your enemies. So who does this sound like, Israel? The so-called Jew man has the ultimate power. These so-called Jewish people, right, who call themselves Jews, they have the ultimate power. They control everything. They own everything. They have the ultimate power. There's only one nation of people, right, that has no power to stand before their enemies. And that's the true children of Israel. Those are the Israelites, right? Those of us that descend from this diaspora. And that's including the Native American Indian tribes, today who they call Latinos, Hispanics, and Mexicans, Puerto Ricans. Because how did they get to America? They got to the America after they were taken out of the land of Israel in the northern kingdom by King Shalmaneser. How did they get to the Americas? It tells you it here. 2 Ezra chapter 13. This is how the Native American Indian tribes got to America, who are known as the 10 lost tribes of Israel. After they were taken out of the land of Israel by the king of Assyria, Shalmaneser V, right, around 720 BC, this is how they got to the Americas. It says here, it says, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king, whom Shalmaneser, the king of Assyria, led away captives. And he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. But they took this counsel amongst themselves, right? That they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where neither mankind had dwelt. that further country is the Americas. That's how they got there, right? Because no one was ever been there before. I mean, they knew about the journey because King Solomon had sent ships there 250 years earlier, had commissioned ships to go there, all right? And those stories are in the Bible. It tells you about King Solomon's had a navy in a place called Tarshish that would go to these far places. And one of the places they went to was to the Americas. And this is how the 10 lost tribes knew about the Americas, this land so far away. So it says that they might keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. That was their main driving force. They realized they couldn't keep the laws, commandments and statutes in their own land, so they wanted to go to this new, somewhere new and start afresh to worship Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai. And they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow places of the river. For the Most High then showed them signs for them. Those signs was how to get to the Americas, and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, and the same region is called Asheroth, which means in the Hebrew, which means new land, right? New country, new land. Then dwelt they there until the latter times, and now when they shall begin to come. So they were there until the southern kingdom were brought to the Americas. How? The southern kingdom got there by the transatlantic slave trade. The northern kingdom got to them through here. They came through, this is the river Euphrates here. That's the Tigris, that's the Euphrates. They came into the Persian Gulf here, into the Indian Ocean. This is where they came, this is where the Lord directed their ship. They came around the Horn of Africa, into the Atlantic Ocean, into the Americas. This was the journey that took them a year and a half. They knew about that from King Solomon's days. So when it says in the Bible, what we just read here, back to, where was we? In the Apocrypha, when it says, but they took counsel together among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, that they might keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land, and they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow place of the river. For the Most High showed them signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. So this is how they got there. That's the Euphrates, into the Persian Gulf, into the Indian Ocean. The Most High held back the floods, right? The storms, the bad weathers, right? To get them all the way to the Americas. And this is how the Native American, who they call Native American Indians today, this is how they got to the Americas. So this is part of the diaspora that happened to Israel. Because those Israelites that was kept in captivity under King Shalmaneser didn't want to go back to the land of Israel over here. They said they wanted to go somewhere new to worship the Most High, because they realized they wasn't able to keep the laws, commandments, and statutes when they was in the land of Israel. That's why they didn't go back. They was in captivity for 25 years. So what the king of Assyria did, he put people from his country into the land of Israel. And that's why when the Lord was on the scene, he told the Israelites, do not go into the land, do not go to the Gentiles or to any land of the Samaritans. Go ye not, but go seek the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Because the Samaritans is what we know as Samaria, was filled up now mainly, literally, of heathens, people who this king, Shalmaneser, put into the land. See? Cities of Israel filled with strangers. So I keep telling you about the blue letter boy, they learned so much from us. It says, and the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and from Kuta and from Ava and from Hamath and from Sepharim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria, which is the northern kingdom, instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria and dwelt in the cities thereof. So that's why when the Lord was on the scene, he knew that those people that was in the northern kingdom in Samaria were not Israelites. They were heathens, and they'd been living there all this time. That's why when the Lord met the Phoenician woman at the well, the Syrophoenician woman at the well, and she said that her father, when he says to her, oh, see, this always happens, you know. Is it John 4? John 4. He says, we know what you worship. Yeah, the woman of Samaria. There comes a woman of Samaria to draw water. Yahushua says unto her, all right? Yahushua says unto her, give me to drink, for the disciples were gone away into the city to buy meat. Then says the woman of Samaria unto him, how is it that thou, being a Jew, right, which is an Israelite, but Yahushua was from the tribe of Judah, asks drink of me, which I am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans, because the actual real Jews, the Israelites, knew that those people in Samaria were not Israelites, right? They knew that they were from Assyria and that they'd been living there for over 700 years. It says, Yahushua answered and said unto her, if thou knowest the gift of the Most High, and who it is that says to thee, give me to drink, thou would have asked of him, which he would have given thee the living water, which is the word, right? The scriptures. Then the woman says unto him, Sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water, which is the word, the scriptures, right? What he was going to give her, that's the living water, the kingdom of heaven. But she didn't understand that. It says, art thou greater than our... So she says to Yahushua, art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well and drank thereof himself and his children and his cattle? So because she believed that Jacob was her forefather, because her people who came from Assyria, right, who came from the king of Assyria, brought men from Babylon, Kuta, Ava, Hamath, Seraphim, and placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel, right? And they possessed Samaria and dwelt their cities thereof. That's why she thought that those were her forefathers, because her people had been living in there since the Israelites were exiled out of that land by King Shalmaneser V around 720 BC. So her ancestors have been living in the land for over 700 years. So she believed that she's from Jacob, right? But she wasn't, and the Lord knows these people. So she says, art thou greater than our father Jacob? That's why she said that. The woman from Samaria, which gave us the well and drank thereof himself and his children and his cities, and his cattle. Yahushua answered and said unto her, whatsoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again, but whosoever shall drink of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst, but the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life, right? Then the woman said unto him, Sir, give me this water that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. So she wanted to get the word, the scriptures. She wanted to know what the kingdom of heaven was all about, what salvation was about. Yahushua says unto her, go and call thy husband and come hither. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Yahushua said unto her, thou hast well said, I have no husband, for thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not thy husband. In that sayest thou truly. The woman says unto him, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain. See, she thought she was of Israel, that she was of the generation of Jacob, that she descended from Jacob. So she said to Yahushua, our fathers worship in this mountain. And ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. Yahushua says unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. Ye worship you know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshippers, the true children who are part of the diaspora today, shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. All right? So that's Yahushua telling her. Sorry, family. government at the door. Can't be asked to go out there. So this is what he's saying. The hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshippers shall worship the Father in the spirit and in truth, for the Father seeketh such to worship him. Right? The Most High is the spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. So Yahushua knew she wasn't an Israelite. He knew she was a Gentile, and that her forefathers were these people that the king of Assyria brought into the land from Babylon, from Kuta, from Avar, from Hamath, and from Sepharim. And they placed them in the cities of Samaria instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed the land. So this is what Yahushua made clear to her, right? But she, even after that, she's probably still didn't understand, because she believed she's been there for so long, her ancestors, that she was from the line of Jacob. So the true diaspora will return into the land of Israel, because the Lord is going to deliver them. And there was the prophecies was always telling you, Moses, let's go to a few more of these. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse, where do I want to go to? Verse 26, right? It says, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that ye shall soon utterly perish from off the land, whereunto you go over the Jordan to possess it, right? And we showed you in 2 Kings, one of those prophecies that was fulfilled, right? Ye shall not prolong your days upon it, but shall utterly be destroyed. So we showed you the different times, going all the way back to the captivity of Israel under the Assyrian king, Shalmaneser, the captivity of Judah, right? Yeah, Assyria takes Israel into captivity. The Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar take Judah, which is the southern kingdom, into captivity. So we showed you those two there. This is to do with the conquest of 70 AD, when the Romans took down the Israelites and we became a diaspora again, right? This is 70 AD, all right? And then the last great major diaspora was the transatlantic slave trade. As you can see, Esau took us, because this is where we fled. 70 AD, we fled to the west coast of Africa. And then we were taken all over the world. And as you know, or you should know, or if you don't, that prophecy is in Deuteronomy 28 and 68. We're just going to go straight to the point. It says, and the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again, which is America, right? With ships, by the way whereof I spake unto thee. Those were the transatlantic slave ships. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there you shall be sold unto your enemies, which is what they did, Esau, Edom, for bondmen and bondwomen, slave men and slave women, and no man shall buy you. That word buy in the Hebrew is qanah, which means redeem. No man shall redeem us, because only the Lord can redeem the children of Israel. So when it says here, when thou shalt beget children, right? It says, and children's children, ye shall have remained long in the land, and shall corrupt yourselves. That's what happened to us. We corrupted ourselves, and make graven images or likeness of anything, and shall do evil in the sight of the Lord by power to provoke him to anger. That's what we did. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that ye shall soon utterly perish from off the land, whereunto you go over to the Jordan to possess it. Ye shall not prolong your days upon it, right? But shall utterly be destroyed. And the Lord shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither the Lord shall lead you. And that's what happened to us. That's why the Lord's only coming back for a remnant of Israel. And there you shall serve gods, the work of man's hands, woods and stone. So think about it. Those that worship Allah, they go on that pilgrimage to walk around the Kaaba stone. They worship. We are worshiping God's hands of stones, work of men's hands, wood and stone, the Kaaba stone. The nation of Islam, they're Israelites, but they're worshiping Islam, and they go on a pilgrimage to Mecca, and they walk around that Kaaba stone 7 times, part of their worshiping, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell, right? You think about people that worship Buddha. I mean, the worst case about people is those that worship white Jesus, because they're still trapped in that belief of white Jesus, white supremacy Christianity, which is not biblical. It's all this Anglo, what they call themselves, Anglo-Saxons, those English people in England, the Protestants and the Catholics, and those in America, the Bible Belt. It's all white supremacy. It's not biblical. What we are showing you is biblical prophecies that have been fulfilled. And there you shall serve gods, the works of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear nor smell. But if from thence thou shalt seek the Lord thy power, so from the lands of your captivity, if you seek the Lord your power, Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, thou shalt find him, right? If thou seek him with all thy heart and with all thy soul. It says, when thou art in tribulation, and all these things are come upon thee, right? So we've been in tribulations right up to this day. Even in the latter days, and these are the latter days. If thou turn to the Lord, thy power, so even all this tribulation that we've been through and that we're still in today, if we turn to the Lord, Yahweh Hashem Yahushai, our power, and shall be obedient unto his voice, for the Lord, Yahweh, thy power, is a merciful power. He will not forsake thee, Israel, neither destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of thy fathers, which he sware unto them. He won't forget you, Israel. Deuteronomy 32. Excuse me. So go straight to the point. 26. I said I would scatter them into the corners, right? Into the corners, the four corners of the world, right? I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. So we were what? We were scattered to the four corners of the world. And he said, I will make the remembrance of them. He says what? I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. Right? The remembrance of them to cease from among men. That's why they call you African Americans, to make the remembrance of you, you Israelites, cease from among men. That's why they call you Jamaicans, Puerto Ricans, Antiguans, Barbadians. That's why they call you Latinos, Hispanics, Mexicans, and Puerto Ricans, because Esau has made the remembrance of you cease from among men. Why? Because it's prophecy. That's why they called you Native American Indians. Esau came to the Americas and saw the 10 lost tribes. Esau came to the West Coast and saw the Southern Kingdom and brought them over to join their brethren in the transatlantic slave trade and called them all these names. He says, you're African Americans, you're West Indians, you're Caribbeans, you're Jamaicans, you're Antiguans, you're Barbadians. And you guys, you're Mexicans, you're Puerto Ricans, you're Peruvians, you're Brazilians, you're Argentinians. He gave all these names. Because it's prophecy. It's prophecy. Esau came and found the 10 lost tribes of Israel. He knew you were Israelites, you Native American Indian tribes, today who they call Latinos, Hispanics, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans. He knew those people on the west coast of Africa, who Esau's calling Africans today, or African Americans, or West Indians, or Haitians. He knew that those were the Southern Kingdom, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, predominantly from the Southern Kingdom. They were members of the other tribes amongst them, but predominantly these people were Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. So Esau knew all these things, but it's prophecy. I'm showing you again, it's categorically prophecy, because the Lord says, I said I would scatter you into the corners, and that's what he did to us. This was the last great diaspora. And I will make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. Because the first two diasporas, we always knew we were Israelites. When we was taken to Assyria, we knew who we were. We knew we were Israelites. That's why they fled. That's why they took the route from the river Euphrates into the Persian Gulf to go to the Americas, the 10 lost tribes, because they didn't want to go back to the land of Israel, because they said they wouldn't be able to. They want to go somewhere new to worship their power. So in the Assyrian captivity, the northern kingdom decided to go somewhere new. So they took the route through the river Euphrates into the Persian Gulf, and we showed you where they went, around the Horn of Africa, through the Indian Ocean, into the Atlantic Ocean, to the Americas. So we knew who we were then. When the Babylonians took us into captivity in Babylon, 70 years, we knew we were Israelites, Judah. When the Romans came and took us down in 70 AD, we knew who we were, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. It's this last captivity that was stripped from us. Why? Because it's a promise. It's a prophecy. It's an absolute prophecy. I will make the remembrance of them to cease from among the heathen. It's prophesied in Jeremiah as well. I think it's Jeremiah 17 and 4. Jeremiah chapter 17 verse 4. And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not. For ye have kindled a fire in my anger, which shall burn forever. So Jeremiah is showing you that it was going to happen to us. Those people calling themselves so-called Jewish, they've been calling themselves that for the last, since they converted during the Khazarian time, around 750 AD, 725 AD. They've always been calling themselves Jewish. They've never discontinued from that name. Why? Because they're not the true children of Israel. The prophecy says the true children of Israel are going to discontinue. The true diaspora of Israel are going to discontinue from their heritage. All right? 17 and 4. Jeremiah said it. So did Moses. He said, I'm going to scatter you to the corners, and I will make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. What do I want? Let's go to John 7. John chapter 7. Let's start here. John chapter 7, verse. We'll start at verse 32. It says, the Pharisees heard that the people murmured such things concerning him, concerning Yahushua, right? And the Pharisees and the chief priests sent officers to take him. Then said Yahushua unto them, Yet a little while am I with you, and then I go unto him that sent me. Ye shall seek me, and shall not find me, and where I am, thither ye cannot come. All right? So they misunderstood this, but look how they misunderstood what Yahushua was saying to them. Then said the Jews among themselves, Whither will he go? So it says, whither will he go, that we shall not find him? Will he go unto the dispersed, the diaspora, among the Gentiles, and teach the Gentiles? So is he going to go to the diaspora among the Gentiles, because we are living amongst the heathen Gentiles, to teach the Gentiles? Right? So this is what they thought, the Pharisees. So they understood that Israel was scattered amongst the Gentiles and were called Gentiles all the way back to the time when the Lord Yahushua, who the world ignorant calls Jesus Christ, was walking the earth. They knew. Even the Pharisees knew. That's why they said that. Where is he? They didn't understand what he was saying. The Lord was talking about him dying and coming back again. Right? After 3 days and 3 nights, he was going to raise from his grave, from his tomb. So but they misunderstood that. So they said, then said the Jews among themselves, Whither will he go, that we shall not find him? Will he go unto the dispersed amongst the Gentiles and teach the Gentiles? So they understood Israelites were called Gentiles and lived amongst the Gentiles. All right? I want to go to So the Lord understood, they knew. This is why the Lord said this. And I keep saying it. This is why the Lord said this. Matthew 10 and 5. This is why the Lord said this to the disciples. These 12 Yahushua sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles, of the diaspora, these are the heathen Gentiles that the Lord's referring to. And into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not. Because who is in the city of the Samaritans? Who is in there? These people here, that the king of Assyria brought there. And the king of Assyria brought men from Babylon and Kutar and Abar and Hamath and Saphram and placed them in the cities of Samaria, which is what they call the Samaritans, instead of the children of Israel. And they possessed Samaria, the land of the Samaritans, and dwelt in the cities. So this is why the Lord said this, because he knew who was in there. These 12 Yahushua sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles, the heathen Gentiles, not the Israelite Gentiles, and into any cities of the Samaritans, which is Samaria, enter ye not, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And as you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That's why the Lord said that. John chapter 11. Now I'm going to go to yeah, there it is. It says there, and this spake he not of himself, but being high priest that year, this is Caiaphas, he prophesied that Yahushua, so Caiaphas is the head priest, right? Let's just go up a few verses, you can see. It says, and one of them, named Caiaphas, being the high priest that same year, said unto them, ye know nothing at all, nor consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and that the whole nation perish not. Who is that one man? Yahushua. So even Caiaphas, the head priest, knew that this one man that was coming to die for the nation was only coming to die for the children of Israel, for that nation alone. And this spake he not of himself, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Yahushua should die for that nation, the nation of Israel, and not for that nation only, but that also he should gather together in one the children, listen carefully, of the Most High that were what? That was scattered abroad. The diaspora. The diaspora. So why is it so hard today for people to understand that the only people that can receive salvation are children of Israel? The only people that the Apostle Paul came for, because he was the apostle of the Gentiles, were the Israelite Gentiles. Why is it so hard to understand? Everybody back then knew. Caiaphas is the head priest, the head Pharisee. He's the chief Pharisee. He understood that he was only coming for the children of Israel and the children of Israel that were scattered abroad. The diaspora. Everybody else gets a knicker in a twist. And we are the diaspora of the children of Israel. Those of us that call ourselves African Americans, West Indians, and Caribbeans, those that descend from what? From the transatlantic slave trade. And those that call themselves Native American Indian tribes of North and South America and Canada, today who they call Latinos, or Spanish, Mexicans, and Puerto Ricans. Those are the diaspora of the children of Israel. And also the speckled bird, because Israel is also mixed amongst other nations. Right? The diaspora of Israel is also mixed amongst the other nations. And that's a reality. So some Israel will look like these other nations, just so you understand. They won't just look like me and you. They will look like these other nations that we speak up against, like Esau, Edom, or Ishmaelites, the Arabs, or the Hamites. They will look like these, or the Chinese, or the Japanese, the Moabites, and the Ammonites. Elam, the East Indians, because Israel is a speckled bird. And that's because of the diaspora. That's why. But those people in the land of Israel that call themselves Jewish are not the children of Israel. They are predominantly Edomites. You'll find more likely Israelites that are living amongst them, that are living amongst the Sephardic Jews. there will be many Israelites that are living amongst the Sephardic Jews that are truly Israelites. But predominantly those people around Israel that call themselves Jewish and around the world that live in these different neighborhoods around the world are Edomites. Acts chapter 8 verse 4, it says, therefore they that were scattered abroad went everywhere preaching the word. So that's where they went. They went everywhere preaching the word because they were looking for, this is who they were looking for. This is why they went everywhere preaching the word abroad. James 1:1. James, a servant of the Most High and of the Lord, Yahushua, Mashiach, to what? To the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. Greetings. See that? To the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. Greetings. And at that particular time, James would have been traveling all around here. Right next to Israelites scattered abroad, all around here. Israelites that were scattered into Egypt, North Africa, Israelites that would have been scattered into Asia. Predominantly, he would have been dealing with them because the disciples didn't come over this side of the world where the 10 lost tribes were. But they understood Diaspora, who they were. Who they were. It's beautiful. James, a servant of the Most High, is telling you. And of the Lord, Yahushua, Mashiach, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad. Right, a couple more precepts before we shut this down. Romans 11. Don't want to go. I'm going to go Romans 11. Romans 11 verse 13. For I speak to the Gentiles, which are the Israelite Gentiles, what Paul is saying, right? Insomuch as I am the apostle of the Gentiles, I magnify mine office. Paul was the apostle of the Israelite Gentiles, right? He wasn't coming and looking for Gentiles of other nations. 1 Timothy chapter 2. He was the apostle of the Israelite Gentiles. 1 Timothy 2:7 says, whereunto I am ordained a preacher and an apostle. I speak the truth in Yahushua and lie not, a teacher of the Gentiles in faith and verity. That's the Israelite Gentiles. All right, it's as simple as that. Acts 11. Acts 11. We might just finish it here. Oops. Acts 11. Let's see what I want to go to. I don't think we need to. I was thinking of going to Acts 11. Speaking. Now we can finish it here. So anyway, so Paul was an apostle of the Israelite Gentiles. The word diaspora is a term that comes from the ancient Greek word meaning to scatter abroad or about. And that's what happened to us. We were scattered to the four corners. All right. And that's exactly what the people of a diaspora do. They scatter from their homeland to places across the globe, spreading their culture as they go. Did not we do that? Our culture's everywhere. Everybody wants to be us, right? Everybody wants to walk like us, talk like us. They want to have music. They want to dance like us. They want to look like our women and have, you know, bums and noses and lips. And they want to have brown skin like us. They want to have kinky hair like us. They want to run as fast as us. They want to be as strong as us. They want to be able to box like us, play football like us. They all want to be like us. They all hate us, but they all want to be you. And that's who we are. We spread our culture everywhere. The definition of a diaspora is the dispersion of a people from their homeland, or a community formed by people who have exited or been removed from their homeland. So, on that note, I'm going to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashim, Yahushai, Ba'ashim, Rakah, Kodash. I pray this was an edifying lesson to the brothers and sisters that tune in live. And for those of you that may tune in later, Shalom, 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 Kwam Yasharala. All praises. Shalom, family. Shalom. All praises. Kwam Yasharala. Kwam Yasharala.